It's so hot. Everybody's home.
Tobias Leenaert, welcome to Vegan Fest Catalunya.
Gràcies.
El Tobias, qui no el coneix, és un activista vegà belga, és autor, conferenciant, educador, és també el cofundador de ProVeg International i s'ha de dir que també té un petit santuari a Bèlgica, que és Feathery Forest. Ha escrit un llibre que es diu How to Create a Vegan World, a Pragmatic Approach. Es Hace un futuro vegano, un enfoque pragmático, traducido en español, que lo tenéis aquí. So, how do you feel to be here?
It's very nice to be here. I'm always very moved to see all these people working for a better world. It's giving me a good feeling, and it makes me believe for a second that everything is going to be all right.
Can you tell something about your career?
Yeah, I've been vegan for 25 years, and I've founded several organizations, ProVeg International. I became vegan in my university years, and I made my master's thesis about veganism. And there I decided to devote my entire life to the animals.
Why are you vegan?
My personal reason is for animal suffering. I think that what we do to the animals is, to speak with Yuval Harari, is the biggest crime in history. So it is. I don't think there is any bigger evil in history than factory farming and than the way we treat animals.
Sí. I jo li vull demanar al Tobias què es pot fer per, si esta és només peresa, mandra, o si és una falta de responsabilitat nostra. Do you think that this
I got it.
You understand?
Yeah.
You got it? Yeah.
Yeah, so I think the first thing we have to do is realize that all of us, also vegans, are doing this. So for instance, I may think that I should not wear any clothing that is not ethical, that is not made in India or whatever, but I am. We all have this disconnection sometimes between what we believe and what we do.
Creiem en lo que fem al final del dia, no?
So I think the solution is, some people can say, I love eating meat, but still I care about animals, so I'm going to change and I'm going to become vegan. But most people, they love eating animals so much that they don't want to change. We have to have products that are so good, that are cheap enough, and that are everywhere, so that people don't have the idea that they have to sacrifice something. People do what other people do. I always say most people eat meat because most people eat meat, right? And we have to change that. We have to achieve a critical mass so that people do not longer consider it as normal to eat meat.
Ara li volia demanar si necessitem més acció. O sigui, quina és la situació actual del veganisme, si ell pensa que que necessitem més acció. You know what I mean?
So we, as a movement, as a vegan movement, we are growing, but I think that our numbers are not high enough yet to have an actual revolution. I think that revolution will come, and that we will be able to really take to the streets, like for climate change, against racism, but for animals. But that time is not yet.
Una revolució.
And so one of the questions we have to ask is, if we want a bigger group, because we want that revolution, who are we going to allow to our group? The thing is that we don't want a vegan club, we want a vegan world. Do we allow everybody who cares about animals and who wants to look in the same direction? We need a group that is big enough to have political influence.
Ell diu que, parlant ahir avui, deia que hi ha gent molt poc apassionada, moltes vegades, en el veganisme, i hi ha gent que fins i tot és massa apassionada, si volem dir d'alguna manera. Can you explain this?
Yes, so some people, maybe some of you, are vegan or vegetarian, and they think like, this is my business, I'm not going to talk to other people about it. Maybe some of you are like that, they're vegan, and they want to really convince everybody else, and they might be a bit too confrontational, a bit too aggressive about it. Finding the balance between those two ends of the spectrum and be able to talk to other people about this very important issue in a compassionate and a rational way so that we can make this movement grow. Being vegan is a first step. It's a good step, but it's not even the most important step, I think. The most important step is to become active and to do something.
Exactly.
To do something like all these people here with their businesses, all these people with their NGOs here, people like you, actually do something. Because otherwise, just eating vegan donuts is not enough.
Estan sortint moltes organitzacions que estan creant carn cultivada en laboratori. I want to know what you think about
You
cultivated
mean
meat.
cultivated meat?
Yeah.
Right? So I think we should be very pragmatic when we look at veganism. And veganism is not an end in itself. It's a means to reduce suffering. So if we have cultivated meat, which is from real animal cells, so it's real animal meat, if there is no suffering involved, if there's no animal abused for it, it's vegan enough.
Moltes companyies, grans companyies de productores de carn que estan començant des de ja fa un temps, per ara sempre més, a fer productes vegans. What do you think about the big companies that start to selling vegan products?
Yeah, so some vegans have big problems with huge companies like Nestle or Unilever or even meat companies who are selling vegan products. Only because there's big companies with a lot of money that we can now see vegan advertisements in the street. Before, we had only small companies and they don't have money. What can happen with McDonald's? They can go out of business. It's not going to happen. They're not going to become a vegan company overnight. The only thing that can happen is gradually becoming more and more sustainable and compassionate. That's the only thing that can happen incrementally.
Demanar-li si ell té confiança en les futures generacions.
See, if you look at so after Generation X and Generation Y and Generation Z, there is now Generation Alpha. Generation Alpha are the people, the kids who have been born after 2010. Among them, some research shows that among them, 20 to 30% of them does not eat meat. 20 to 30%. What can give us hope? I think that is the thing that gives us most hope. Looking at the young generation.
A mi m'agradaria saber si hi ha algú que vol demanar alguna cosa en concreta al Tobias.
Because in your book, you talk about it, about grassroots activities or foundations, like Plant-Based Treaty, for example. What do you think about it? What value you see in this movement?
Yeah. I mean, grassroots in general, very important, especially in terms of like increasing demand for the products. And Plant-Based Treaty, so this is a movement to ask cities and big companies to sign a treaty that they agree with a plant-based future. I am very enthusiastic about this, and I think that this movement has to become a lot more political. So a lot more pressure on governments. It will be easier if there's more of us. So that's why grassroots is very important, to bring in more people to the movement so we can put more pressure on governments.
¿Por qué considera que hay tanto odio a los veganos cuando no hacemos absolutamente daño a nadie? Quizás tiene algo que ver con que ellos, para no sentirse mal con las decisiones que toman día a día, deciden cegarse y deciden ir en contra del veganismo, ¿no? Para no afrontar sus acciones.
Gracias.
So I think what happens is when we see somebody else doing something that we know is a good thing and we don't do it ourselves, we feel bad about ourselves. One solution is to be gentle, maybe, and also I think maybe rather than always trying to use the arguments about animal suffering, etc., we can use the tool of good food. So the arguments can often make the distance between us and them bigger.
Sí.
Food can often bring us closer together. After you had good food together, then you can talk about the argument.
How do you feel, for example, I'm one of the only ones that are vegans in my family. How do you feel about your loved ones, knowing your cause, knowing how you suffer about this, and knowing all the suffer that the animals are going through? And with all that info, they deciding not to change. Like, how do you feel about that? That your loving ones are practically doing what you are fighting for.
I know it's very hard to see that. I have it with my brother. My advice would be to be patient and to also not to waste too much time on them and try to focus on other people.
Hola, hi. Kind of a follow-up question, a similar question. Is there anything that you find particularly difficult being vegan and also having... Sometimes I feel that I am the only person that is doing something in my immediate circle, and I try and do all the things that you said, and yet sometimes it's very hard. And of course, you know, my husband's vegan and people around me are still vegan, but I sometimes feel like I'm fighting a losing battle. And what do you have any tools or tips, and not just what you said already, but what things do you find hard and how do you overcome that?
So I think one thing that helps is to come to places like this, and maybe especially to vegan conferences where you can learn for a couple of days and you are entirely in the company of people like you, like us. That recharges your batteries a lot. I think I would recommend that to everybody, to at least go to a conference. One, you're not alone. Everywhere there is this movement of very, very dedicated people. People that I know will not stop before this fight is over.
So you were speaking about these two kind of positions, like vegans who have this kind of aggressive approach, and then the others that are vegan and do not speak much about it. So in these kind of midterms, what is your maybe advice regarding reductionism? Because I think it's a good advice in terms of impact. So maybe speaking about veganism directly is not as effective as speaking about reductionism with people that eat meat and eat animals on a daily basis.
First of all, so for the people who are not passionate enough, I say you have to talk about it. And to the other people, I say talk about it in a smart way. And the smart way means, first of all, that you are realizing that you are not your audience. Talk about something that interests them, that you know interests them. And if you're too passionate, you just want to say what you want to say.
Exactly.
And that's not necessarily what they need or what they can or what they want to hear. It can be maybe more efficient to give them some target that you know is feasible for them, like try veganuary for a month, or maybe try only to eat meat in the weekend, rather than say go vegan, because you know that that's too difficult for them.
I want to know your opinion about cultivated meat, but especially about the bovine serum.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, you need to farm the animals and remove a lot of blood from them. So I want to know what's your take on this.
Yeah, so if you make cultivated meat with bovine serum, which is something from calves, then it includes suffering. But the idea is, of course, to not use that anymore. And most companies today are not using that anymore.
You mentioned that veganism is just a means to a further end, which is the reduction of animal suffering. And of course, we know that a lot of animal suffering is caused by human action. I wanted to ask about a separate issue, which is the fact that maybe most of animal suffering in the wild is caused by natural events. And if one, I think, assumes an anti-speciesist position, one should be disposed to accept the view that one should help wild animals who suffer from natural harm. So this is something I strongly believe in, and I think it's not sufficiently discussed in the vegan movement or the wider anti-speciesist movement. And I was curious to hear your views about it. Thank you.
If our position is that we are against suffering and that suffering is bad, then we also find suffering in nature without us being the cause. So ideally, we can do something about it someday. And I think our priority should be to solve the problems that we caused ourselves. Yeah. In the future, I hope we can solve the problem of animals in the wild that are suffering for hunger and parasites and predation and the weather. Most people are devils, demons to the animals, and someday maybe we are angels to all animals.
Ojalá un día serem angels, ángeles para los animals.
Far in the future.
Thank you very much, Tobias, for being here at Vegan Fest Catalunya.
Thank you.
Let's all animals will be free. All animals will be free.